to use them really well, which anyone, you know, under 27 can dance with the thing, you know. But I'm constantly doing the thing where I'm tapping it to try and get the exposure right, and if I go up too much and get the sky, it goes under down here, and I can't get it, and then the focus is not there, and it's like I'm damn thing, and finally get a picture. And then, you know, after I use this to make photographs, then I get my Nikon out, and it's like, you know, I have to become reacquainted. I mean, it's a different gear set going on, and it's like, stop shutter speed, okay, light, exposure, meter here, you know, things like that. So I would presume that for most students, and correct me if I'm wrong, for most students, if they're in school and they happen upon something that might be great for the publication, and it's a spur of the moment thing, this is what they use, right? If it's something that's planned event and they're a photography student that's really interested in it, they'll go and pick up the adjustable camera. Am I?
Yeah, that's right. That's how we do it. Like if they know about it ahead of time, then they charge the battery, they clean the camera card, they take the camera. But yeah, if something just comes up, then they use their phones. And that's fine. I mean, they end up looking just fine for our purpose.
Yeah, they do. And the lenses on them are really good. I mean, the resolution is really high resolution. The only problem really comes into play is when you're when you're in a situation where it's like in a room like this where there's a lot of windows and it's really backlit, and all of a sudden you've got to be able to, you know, how am I going to meter for that one face that's really backlit and it comes out bad, or the focus isn't right, or more importantly, you have a camera that's an adjustable camera, and you have somebody that's really creative and they want to do something with depth of field, you know, to where they bring something out of focus and stop it, you know, wide open, and be able to have that in focus but this out of focus and do things like that. You can't do that with that. So but the one constant with whether you're using this or the adjustable camera are the foundations, right? I mean, composition, quality of light, human moments, those kinds of things. So to kind of help me along here, get in the right direction, how many of you also teach a photography class, or your school has a photography class? Okay, good. So we're familiar with a lot of the basic concepts of photography, so, and composition and lighting and things like that. Good. Well, I run a program called Pictures of the Year International. There's a little flyer up here. It's what you're seeing here. It's the Missouri School of Journalism has what we call professional practice programs, which we're not at all teaching to the students in this regards. These are professional programs that we outreach to professionals in the industry. Pictures of the Year International is a program that has three main components. One is an annual competition for professional photographers. The second is, after that competition is judged, they go into exhibitions that tour the world. And then the third is that those pictures then go into our vast archive of images. POY has been going on since 1943. It started, what happened in 1943? It started because a professor here felt like that war photographers were not getting enough recognition during World War II and had little agate lines, credit lines, and so he created a competition for newspaper photographers to submit their war photographs from the Pacific Theater and the European Theater. And it has since grown. Now we have The annual competition has close to 58,000 images submitted every year from photographers all over the world, 40 different nations. I mean, it's primarily the big ones: Associated Press, New York Times, National Geographic, Los Angeles Times, Reuters, AFP, as well as more and more a growing number of freelance photographers who are doing work around the world. And the judging is held here. It's 3 straight weeks. As you can imagine, to go through 58,000 images, it's three straight weeks. We have 2 days off in those 3 weeks, and we pretty much start at 8 a.m. and go until 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. We invite 17 professionals to come in and judge from the different news organizations. Based on the different divisions, we have still photography, multimedia, we have editing, any number of different things. And the categories are pretty much what you would think. Spot news, general news, sports, sports action, sports feature, recreational sports, science and natural history, issue reporting, all of those kinds of things. Stories, to where it's 12 pictures that make up a story. So, and then we hold a program at the end of the year that recognizes the winners from those competitions. And this past year, we've been at the museum in Washington, D.C., and that's where we hold exhibitions and the awards presentations. So that's what I do. If you want a great resource teaching tool, just go to poyi.org, and you can grab my card or the brochure up there. There is, one piece of transparency I got to tell you is that many of the images are the real deal. I mean, this stuff is hardcore. It's hardcore photojournalism. You're seeing some of them up here. This is kind of the tamer stuff, but each year, like Ebola and conflicts in the Ukraine and Darfur and just any number of other issues will just reach down, grab your heart, and just yank it out. It's tough. It's really tough. Some students may not be able to handle it, but the thing that is amazing among all the photographs are the things that we just talked about: composition, quality of light, the moment, human interaction. All of those things come into play when looking at these photographs. So that's where I sort of come from, and I hope that we can kind of talk about things a little bit. I'm going to show you a couple of things, but if this isn't, this is kind of what I expected, so I'm going to jump in here and start with, let's start here. So I kind of figured that, okay, you know the basics about composition. The fundamentals of art apply to photography. Rule of thirds, which is, and of course every rule is meant to be broken, but don't center your subject. It's like a tic-tac-toe board. You want to put your focal point within one of the quadrants of that rule of thirds. Quality of light, amazing quality of light will always make a great photograph. The foundation of everything that photojournalism is about, it's about people. People. And it really frustrates me a little bit whenever, and I've worked at a number of newspapers where the editor says, Editor Earl, I call him Editor Earl. Earl says, they're going to be building a new supermarket out there on Route W. There ain't nothing out there now but a field and a bunch of weeds, but can you go get a picture of that field? It's like, What, we don't know what a field of weeds looks like, you know? Is that really the best visual communication we can come up with? It's about people. And people like to look at pictures of other people. And we are in such a visual world today that that's true now more than ever. So we'll go through some of those qualities here, but I just want to give you a broad overview of some things that you may have thought about, some things you may not. Deals a little bit with editing, which is what your real role is in a lot of ways. So rather than photography or photojournalism, I really refer to it as visual journalism. Visual journalism includes maps and graphics and use of white space and well-designed pages and typography, and as well as photojournalism. It's visual storytelling. It's a visual, we're going to talk about a visual language and the toolbox, as I call it. Creating great visual content, inspiring creativity with assignments, cropping, and visuals and words working together. And that applies both in line and on print. You all know this. I mean, art and photos really capture the reader's eye. It's a thing that really attracts, starts the process of any storytelling. This is iTrack research at Poynter Institute. Photographs have meaning. Photographs are a great entry point to the page. They connect the reader to individual articles. The most important thing is they're not decoration. I mean, if you're really serious about this, you're not going out and shooting something, anything to put on the page. You're looking at the story, you're looking at not the written story, but the story, and trying to analyze what is its visual potential. Now, there are people that say, oh, every story is visual. I'm sorry, I don't buy that. I just don't buy that. I think that there are some stories that are better told in words, and there's just very little visual potential. So the question is, do you use those resources? Do you use that print space to go out and get something and manufacture something that has very little worth to it? So you have to balance it. I don't think it's always necessary to say every story has a photograph, every story has a chart. It's a matter of a toolbox. And I'll get to that in just a little bit. So descriptive writing, narrative storytelling, visual storytelling, using single or multiple photographs and videography. Descriptive writing, these are key words. The same thing, we have visual components. We have subjects, we have action, moment, light, composition, detail, emotion, foreground and background. Narrative journalists rely on the writer's ability to express his or her insights, create a common experience, these kinds of things. I won't bore you with these, you know all these. But a visual journalist conceives the whole experience, not just the writing, not just the pictures or the graphics. They make sense out of a confusing world and give the reader a realistic handhold to a story. They represent an issue or concept with an individual family or group. The visual storyteller uses photographs to present information. Text or audio provides content and meaning for the images, in other words, captions. Recognizes that the photographs evoke emotion, can be powerful. Strives to maintain believability through ethical behavior. Photojournalism is one of those that we don't doctor photographs. I mean, credibility is everything that we have, and we can't afford to let that slip away. It's important that photographs have real meaning, and they're not just decorations on a page, as I mentioned.
Rick, can I interrupt?
Yes, sure.
Two things. One is, will this PowerPoint be on the resource page for us?
I can get it to them, yes,
okay,
absolutely.
That'd be great, thank you. And secondly, with something you just said, do you find that some of your students want to doctor their photos?
Well, when they get here, they're pretty well, I mean, they're journalism, they know that, you know, that, I mean,
It's a
yeah,
non-starter.
that's, yeah. But I would imagine a lot of your students probably don't, it's not even something on their radar.
Right.
It's not even something that they would even think about.
Well, I think today with so many magazines that do Photoshop, certain images and pictures, I mean, I would assume mostly tabloids, but I was just curious.
There's still a large group of magazines and even newspapers that do what they call editorial illustrations, to where they'll take something like, you know, prescription drug abuse, and they'll take a picture of a, you know, a medication bottle and then put a circle around it with a big red X through it or something like that. And it's an illustration, but it's clearly labeled. You know, we're saying that's fine if you want to do something in the studio like that, but you got to be completely transparent with your readers. Tell them it's an illustration, that it's not real, and the photograph cannot, should not even give a hint that it's a true situation or anything like that.
Thank you.
What it boils down for me is that text journalism tells, visual journalism should show. Show me the story. The toolbox. So the way that I look at it is that whenever I approach a story, and I'm more of an editor, I came from an editing background, and the way that I approach a story is I feel like that I have a toolbox. And in this toolbox is still photography. In this toolbox is multiple photographs, motion, video, graphics, maps, those kinds of things. And the thing that a good, smart editor will do is look at the story, analyze its visual potential, and use the right tool for that story. Many times we get caught in a trap, especially here and in other newspapers, when about 7-10 years ago, when video was easy to do, right? Everything had to be video. We got to get a video of it. Got to get a video of it. And what is it? Is some guy, and it's a talking head. What motion there conveys any meaning at all? It's not the right tool for that. You have to think motion photojournalism. Does the motion in the scene or in the environment add to the storytelling quality of that story? That's a tool. You don't use it just because you can. That's going to happen here, right? It's absolutely going to happen here. You're going to get a drone shot of it. Well, maybe not. Maybe not. Are you doing it just because you can? Just because it's trendy at the time to do it? So, a single still photograph, a pair of two still photographs, multiple photographs, found photographs, family snapshots, historical or archival photographs, simple graphics, audio, slideshows using still photographs, display graphics, interactive graphics online, and multimedia pieces. These are all tools in the toolbox, in the visual toolbox that you should use. So when you're encouraging your students to look at a story, have them consider what is the right visual tool, and don't necessarily knee-jerk to we need a photo with that, or we need a video with that, or we need a map with that. Think through it, because you're investing resources, their resources, and the space on the page or on the website to do it. So you want to make sure that the tool is right for the story. Visual goals. Psychological responses show that viewers respond to the human face. The goal of visual journalism is to reflect the human experience by capturing moments. That's really the essence of everything. Reflect the human experience by capturing moments. Photojournalism really is the balance between the art of photography and journalism. photography can and is, for the most part, a big umbrella, and a large chunk of it is fiction. It's fiction. The thing when you start adding journalism to it, it becomes something more than that. Equal parts aesthetic and content. So, creating great visual content, the human emotion, that's by far and away the most, that's the bedrock of every great piece of photojournalism. If you can capture what we feel inside as human beings, as groups, that's what it's all about. That's where the greatest reaction and engagement from a reader will come from. Interaction and non-interaction, conflict, quality of light, we've talked about these, aesthetic compositions, and we'll go into a few of these. So as we look through these, you might want to think of these. What are we looking at? Many of them have a number of different things. Human interaction, emotion, great quality of light, and the photographer is tight, really tight, to get those expressions, those faces. Human interaction, repetitive things that come up in art all the time, sort of the pattern and then the break in the pattern, right? Quality of light, emotion, foreground, middle ground, background, layering of images beyond just having a flat surface. Sometimes pairing two photographs. This guy is a city planner, and as I recall the story, and I could be wrong on this, works for the city, basically just got approved through the city council that they were going to remove some public housing and do something different with it, and these people were the people that were affected. And so sometimes it's that 1 + 1 = 3 equation, right? Any one of those two pictures in and of itself would say something, but the use of both of them together takes it to another plateau. Does that make sense?
Is that a kind of editorialism, though? That last period?
I mean, you're definitely showing the cause and effect of one and another, and these people were affected. If they're in the story, it's no different than if I mean, that's a natural progression of a story. The city planner gets this done. Who's it going to affect?
Right.
How different is juxtaposing visual images than juxtaposing, say, like quotes from sources? Is
Sure.
there any difference? I mean,
I don't think that there is.
Okay.
I mean, he said, she said, right? It's, I mean, we provide a balance. One side wants one thing and one side wants another. We'll get into more of this when we're looking at multiple images, but this is actually from a series of 12 photographs, and there's many more in between about how a city deals with the problem of homelessness in your city. So, quality of light. I mean, just really amazing quality of light. This is a family farm, and it's just very simple, but I mean, inside the barn, it's just amazing quality of light. Same here, now, this would be a nothing photograph without the light. It would be interesting. You'd be saying, wow, what are all these, people doing in this strange environment? But it's the quality of light that really draws you to that. Tight, expressive moments, quality of light again.
Are these all winners?
Mm-hmm. interaction, human interaction, and moments. I mean, a really nice moment there, interaction with the teacher, expressive emotion. Again, just the opposite of that. Interaction, moment, emotion, is being deployed. They're at the airport. Interaction, moment. It's more than just a routine shot. You're waiting for those, I mean, this kid, right? He's in your class, right? And that these two and him, it's gonna happen. So rather than just taking the picture, sure, take that picture, but then just kind of wait. Just give it a few precious moments, and that will happen. That makes it really special. Quality of light, again. And just the unusual, the odd sometimes, behind the scenes at a fashion show. So one of the things that I think you probably all deal with is while you don't, I'm not sure if your reporters or editors turn in photo assignments to photographers, but this is really more about communicating with visual people, with students that are inclined to want to do photography. So this is our assignment form. It's an online form. It's called Tracks. And I just want to kind of go through and show you the difference between something that can really spark some creativity for a student and something that would just have to send them out and do whatever. The story summary is where it really comes down to it. When you're talking to the student about the story, you want to say what the story is about, the subject's relevance, and what do they do that might be visual. That's the one thing that you want to talk about. What is it that they're going to do that might be visual? And the one thing that you don't want to do is have the photographer show up and the subject says, what do you want me to do? And so you need to explore when does your subject engage in their activity, when are they doing it, where are they doing it, those kinds of things. You don't want to be vague or brief and presume that the photographer knows the background of the story. And for advanced photographers, don't have an entry-level reporter telling a photographer how to shoot the photograph. So we're doing a story on the Historical Society. Take a picture of Earl. Well, that doesn't tell us a whole lot. That's not going to inspire very much creativity. But if we say that the Historical Society of Missouri is trying to save the old Stauffer building here in Columbia, the building was built in the 1883. Great-grandfather Earl Stauffer, during the past 3 summers, Earl has used his vacation time to restore the building with his own funds. Site was condemned in 2001. A lot of great information there, a lot of visual nuggets that somebody can really pull from there and begin to twist their head around a little bit. Notes and directions. This is more for the professional, but detailed directions. When is the subject available to be photographed? Does the photo desk need to call and arrange a schedule with the person? Must provide your origination editor's name. That's for us. But basically, this gives us all three. So when you send the photographer out, even if it's to the Insect Club meeting, the school is closed. You need to enter on the door facing Elm Street. That's the door that they're going in. The other doors are going to be locked. The Insect Club works, almost every Saturday morning and things like that. So, I mean, you got to be, the one thing you don't want to do is send the photographer out and they can't find it, or you want, as an editor, I always felt like my job was to get stuff out of the way for the photographer, remove the barriers. Because if they get there, if the first thing they hear is go take a picture of Earl, he works for the Historical Society. Okay. what about Earl? Then the next one is I get there and the Historical Society is locked. Oh, yeah. It's like so many barriers. If you're a visual person, remove those barriers so that they can get those creative juices going, cranking a little bit. So this is one that came up. This is focus of the story is Columbia, who would definitely be impacted by Medicaid cuts. Bethany's life is dependent on Medicaid. She was cerebral palsy and is a wheelchair user. Without Medicaid and social services, she wouldn't be able to get around. It goes into a lot more about she attends community college and those kinds of things. Very well written. Now then, the photographer and you as the editor have a choice. We can either go get a mugshot, a headshot of Bethany. What does a headshot, a mugshot do? It basically proves that the person has a head. That's basically all it does. I mean, I'm being a little facetious, but it basically gives a representation of age, of gender, and ethnicity, and really beyond that, it doesn't tell a whole lot about the person, right? So the next step up from that is what we call an environmental portrait. An environmental portrait takes it beyond that. You're going, somebody is carving a canoe out of a tree stump or whatever. So he works with wood or whatever. So rather than just getting a headshot, you go out to his house, out to the garage, and you have the wood shop in the background. And so he's still there. He's looking directly at the camera. But now you got an environment that tells something about the person. You know, does he wear overalls? Does he wear a little work bib? Does he have a hat? Does he have a visor, glasses? What are his tools around there? Is it a neat shop? Is it a messy shop? Does he have his tools organized well? That kind of environment tells me something about the person. So we went from a headshot to something now that's an environmental portrait that tells me a little bit more about the person. Personality, character, all of that. The next level that takes it even to the next height is the documentary approach. Now, rather than just meeting him out there, we know that he's going to work on his canoe on Saturday afternoon. And so we go out there and we spend a couple hours, 2 or 3 hours with him out there as he's actually working on the canoe. Now we're getting some really intimate photographs of how he works. You know, we go out there and we find out he's got his favorite dog, and the dog is always there. And you know, the kids come out and pester him right in the middle of it. And there's just so much more going on. And we put together 2 or 3 photographs that really now not only tell us about him, his character, his personality, but the whole environment and perhaps why he's impassioned to do this. Does that make sense? So this is Bethany, and we did a whole series of her at home. This is her social worker in the background helping her. She's attending college. You know, it's just that, again, it's that waiting for that moment. The photographer shot a lot of pictures of her going up and down the halls, but then there's this one moment when one student turns to look, right? This adds a little bit different level to it. You know, tight shots on how she works in the classroom. Back at home, sort of a closer for the story, and that's how it was run in the paper. So again, we could have gotten a headshot of her and just run it with that. We could have even gone to her home or to the school and just shot a portrait of her in her home environment or in her class or in her classroom. But we decided to invest a little bit of time because we felt like the series of photographs would convey more about her and her lifestyle than just a simple headshot or portrait.
And I'm sorry, where did you put the series of photos?
That started on page 1, and then we jumped to an inside spread.
And that's, okay.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about cropping. Cropping is a two-edged sword. And you have to be careful, but at the same time, if you're creative, you can really enhance a photograph. It's the ability to improve and the danger to destroy. One of the things that I look at when I look at photographs is I want to bring the reader immediately to what I want them to see. And anything that is distracting, I call visual noise. That's what I call it, visual noise. So little things in the frame that aren't pertinent to what's going on, especially bright spots in a photograph. Like if I'm shooting his photograph here, and I know that these windows over here and over here are going to be really bright, and there's trash cans back here and leaves coming in and stuff like that, I'm going to try and figure out a way to get rid of those because it's just visual noise. The reader's eye will go over here and not there. That's not what I want. So for example, you know, homecoming situation, really nice picture. Little girl, you know, greeting her father as he arrives back at the airport. You know, just that makes it, right? Because, I mean, the blue thing at the top and the railing and the windows over here, it's just like, you know, things that clutter my eye. It's visual noise. I don't need that. So, come in, make it clean, make it simple.
You can see the emotion there, better.
Absolutely, absolutely. Special Olympics coming up, training for Special Olympics. You know, there's a lot going on here, a wide shot. We really need the banners and the folded up bleachers. You know, again, we just come into that interaction. And the diagonal lines of the arms and the bars, you know, just really provide a nice graphic diagonal to the photograph.
How do you know how much of her to cut though?
That's, you know, that's a good
Because,
question.
I mean, there was a lot, it was her whole body before, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it looks real good. I'm just asking, you know, trying to figure out how do you decide on what part?
Aren't there rules or something about cropping at certain parts of a limb?
There are, but I don't really listen
Those
to
are
that.
all arbitrary. Well, I haven't started teaching that. I wondered if I was supposed to.
Yeah. You know, I think it comes down to just a feel. You know, it's like anything art related. I mean, it's not math. It's just that feel that you have on where
And
it's
that one, I mean, she's not really the focus of the
exactly.
point anyway. So,
Uh-huh.
but you can't crop that much with like one of these things.
Well, actually, the digital files are pretty big, and you're using them online, or you know, relatively small in a newspaper. I would think you could come in a little bit. That's
a pretty intense one.
That's a pretty large thing, but it was shot with a digital camera. It was
Right.
probably the same size file that what I have. So, yeah. I mean, it starts to fall apart a little bit there if you look at it, but you know, we're putting it on newsprint, you know. That's how that was used. So, you know, a rec, I mean, the thing is there's not a lot you can do with that, but I mean, you probably didn't even notice the little guy in the, you know, right there that provides a focal point to the photograph. Now, if you just come in a little bit on it, you know, here he's lost, there's a lot of pavement and lines and white up here. You know, just by coming in and getting rid of a lot of that, it helps give the eye sort of a focal point. And again, it's in that rule of thirds, right? He's like right there. I love being, I tell my students to get out their wacky hat. That's what I tell them. You know, it's just, put on your wacky hat. There's going to be times that you're going to, you know, the limb's going to break and you're going to fall off, but so what? You know, put on your wacky hat. And if you come back with a boring photo, try something that's, you know, a crop or something that's a little bit different, you know, that really kind of takes some chances and does something that's just not so boring.
You would cut up his head?
I would, absolutely. I mean, here's where the interaction is that line behind them. There's nothing particularly going on here other than a sign.
But you don't think the sign tells a story too?
You
Actually,
can
go back
tell me
to-
that in the
go back to
caption.
the crop and see it. Yeah, so you can know exactly what that sign says without seeing all the words.
I'm just saying there are times to take a chance with creativity, and I'm going to show you another couple of things with that here in just a minute. Bangladesh flood, wide shot, coming in just a little bit tighter, and cropping. Back to your point, it's really a creative thing. There's no necessarily right or wrong ways to do it. Here's a photograph from, I think it was the World Cup a few years ago.
06.
Yeah, in Germany. So there's this shot. This is the exact same shot, cropped a couple of different ways, depending on what you want to emphasize.
But it's still the same picture.
Yeah. Image size. Recognizing that tightly cropped images size can have power and impact. And the one thing that you should really encourage your students to do is if they're doing this, they should be doing that. Whatever it is, take 2 giant steps forward. It's just, the one thing is that they're always too far away. And then you are cropping them, from you're basically cropping, you should be cropping in the camera, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but just really tight lines and recognizing character in a face, and those expressions and things like that. But, we don't need the rest of her. That expression is really, really nice. A chess player is really tight. Tight. That one's famous, Little Man. And of course, this one is the most famous, on the day. How many newspapers ran a photograph of, President Bush on that day? This is what we did at the Current. We just took it and just came in just ultra tight.
Where you see the differences, and like on this one, it looks like he's got red eyes, like he's crying, and on some of them you don't see that, and on some you do. What causes that?
What causes red eye?
No, not what causes red eye, but if you look at it, you get more of emotional appeal,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
Because you can
I
actually
don't think
see
that-
the strain.
I
in
don't
the red
think that
eyes.
we're used to looking at somebody like this. That.
Because when
Our social culture doesn't allow invasion of
right.
personal space.
Uh-huh.
So when you amplify that with a photograph, you're giving the reader permission to invade that personal space. Okay. And that's something that's rare. And it provides impact.
Was it a photo from The Wire that you?
That was a daily photo that moved.
Okay.
But it was wider.
Your decision was to just.
Right, it was much wider and we just cropped the bejesus out of it.
Yeah, so you had a different look.
Right.
Than all the other.
This one looks more emotional, like he actually had tears, when others, because it's not so cropped and right in there, it just looked like he was like, like something's happening, versus this looks like, oh my God.
Well, part of it, I think what you're talking about though too is that by cropping it that tight, right? Like his eyes have scaled to the point that now they're much more prominent feature of the overall image.
Right.
It's that visual noise. You've gotten rid of these other things that would draw your attention.
Right.
And you're focusing in, whereas the wider picture, you have more to look at.
Well, it changes the whole look, because he doesn't look like in other pictures where it is just the head though, but not as close up. It's like, ooh, stress, more like, oh my God, versus this is like a panic, oh my God.
I want to put my arm on.
Yeah.
I just think it's gonna be okay.
So they're pulling out the emotions, what they're doing.
Just eyeballing it, it looks like both of his eyes are on the intersection points of the wolf on the tic-tac-toe board for
Yeah,
thirds.
yeah, that's true. One of the great copy editing rules is, right, do no harm, right? Same with photographs. Cropping can eliminate content. So flooding in the, along the tributaries of a major river, not cropping it out. This gets back to, the headshot thing, right? Go out and get a headshot. Well, we know he's a older American, Caucasian, and a male. Okay, great. But he's an architect in the city of Chicago, and he designed that building, And then just fun things. I mean, I just kind of threw that in there. This is where you're at, right? Brother did it. And of course, you all know this one, right? The thrill of victory, but there's the people that didn't make it.
Well, yeah. Can I ask a question that has nothing to do with cropping while looking at this picture? I don't know what challenges you guys are having with your student photographers, but even in my 7th year, I'm having trouble getting them to go early, stay for the game, and stay late.
Yeah.
Because I'm not getting enough of the late shot. So any incentives other than showing them awesome photography? Because I do that. I show them awesome photography.
Yeah.
But it's a teenage thing. I
Boy,
have other
that's
plans.
It's not a teenage thing. I had trouble with the photographers when I worked in the business. If the ones that would shoot sports would leave in the middle of the game, and,
Yeah, they say, well, I got the action.
I swear to God, a professional newspaper.
One thing that we do, it can still be in the middle of the game. One thing that I always encourage our sports photographers to do is, it's a fact that you're not going to capture that great play at second base or the winning touchdown throw or whatever. But after that happens, stay on that player. Stay on that player because something's going to happen. The teammates are going to come up, he's going to go off to the sidelines and it's going to continue. I mean, this person missed the winning goal, right? They missed the winning goal, but they had the wherewithal to just stay on it. So this isn't necessarily before or after the game. It's just a matter of don't feel, the goal happens and you miss it. You go, you shouldn't do that. You miss it, know that you're going to miss it, and then just stay on the person and keep going.
That's good advice. They don't really want to stay after the game.
That's the TV mantra even, right? I mean, they always, especially sporting events, they always cut away to the tight close-up of the face and, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I want those last shots.
Do you make your games like a privilege to go to?
It's required assignment.
But it's like, okay, like with ours, like the kids want to go to the varsity games. And they want those varsity games. So in order to get to that varsity game, you have to prove to me that you can do freshman game or JV game and pull through the whole thing before you can get.
Well, I think with a small staff and 144 pages, they're trying to go to all of them as much as possible.
So you don't have.
So it's the kid that doesn't. That I can cover the freshman one because it happens right after school. Like the freshman basketball game's always at 4:30.
Okay.
But it's the kid is like, I don't really want to stay for the whole game and after when the game started at 8.
But
for varsity. You know what I'm saying?
require something like a what's next quote that has to be in there.
I'm saying I require these things. I'm saying they don't do them. I mean, I can require them, but they don't. It's an incentive. You have your golden photographer that already graduated. She's left her awesome examples, but there's always.
Right.
So really, what I was asking is, what's a good tip? And you gave me one, and I'm going to use that one. Keep the camera on the player.
Keep them on the player, or sometimes we actually assign a photographer that if a touchdown happens and it's not on your side of the field, your responsibility is the coach to photograph the coach because you're not going to get it way down there, right? So you're on that side. The touchdown happens, swing around immediately and focus on the coaches just to get something different. Scale and perspective. you know, don't crop out the contrast. You know, action, reaction. You know, and then, you know, Guantanamo Bay. You know, you might think it's not a big deal to have the shadow in there, but it is. And this one is just because it's summer and it's that time of year, but you don't crop out the end. So, and in some of this, you know, there is no necessarily right or wrong. So here is, you know, baseball playoff. Here's how a couple of different newspapers used it. Omaha, you know, look, let's go back to it. So they came up, you know, to the waist, turned it into kind of a squarish at the waist. You know, Idaho left it more full. There's not necessarily any right or wrong answer there. There's nothing at the bottom there that is extraordinarily distracting news, except perhaps a little bit of, you know, there that could probably come out. But so, yeah. And you know, the thing about photographs is be sensitive to the aesthetic qualities of the photograph. Don't crop out, you know, the things that make a photograph really beautiful. You know, lines and angles and things like that. And playing off of the aesthetics within a natural photograph. Wildfires. And fishing, you know. It's just, you know, you want to be aware when the aesthetics are there, it just makes all the difference in the world, and you have the content and the aesthetics in photojournalism. Words and visuals working together. Cut lines. After the photograph, the headline and the cut lines attract the reader. For the example of the Peace March, you know, I would have just had a kicker thing on the kicker headline on the photograph, you know, students participating in Peace March. I don't need the sign in the photograph to tell me that. Essential goal is to provide identity and context to make the photograph more meaningful. In a multimedia and video, captions are often served as audio. Captions, you know, one of the things that's often, you gotta be careful with captions. They can provide additional information. Don't be literal. You know, let the caption provide additional information that's not in the photograph. Don't be redundant or literal. Be written in an active voice, present tense. Avoid the obvious. Avoid visual ventriloquism, and I'll get to that one in the second one. In other words, your student comes back with a picture of the cat in the media center and it's taking a nap. This cat thinks that reading is too hard. Well, no. You're applying human traits to an animal that you don't even know what the cat is thinking. So, you know, and I'm sure that it's very, very tough for you guys because you want your publications to be engaging and fun, but at the same time, where's that gray area to where it's just too cute and silly and frivolous and that kind of thing. So, you know, just don't do that. Let's see. So, you know, Barack Obama closes his eyes while waiting to be inaugurated. You know, holes in a crowded hallway, backstage at Capitol moments before young president was to inherit 2 wars, extended recession, and 10% unemployment rate. You know. Size and presentation. Respect the real estate, whether it's in print or online. Edit to the essential photographs and eliminate redundant images. So this is a little bit what we talked about with the Bush photograph, what I call image size. Image size in a photograph. You know, you're looking at two images and you think one can play smaller, one can play larger, but in the end what happens is that both head sizes are the same. You have, for all intents and purposes, the same photograph. Two people talking, and then the same situation again, that this guy's head size ends up being the same as those, and there's no contrast. When doing visual editing, contrast is everything. That's what made that George Bush photograph so, you know, have so much impact. It's just that you went off the scale with the contrast. And I don't mean contrast as in black and white. I'm talking about size contrast and impact contrast and those kinds of things. You know, the story is about an old tree on people's property. So we have one great photograph of them and the tree, so why do we need a secondary photo of the tree again? Sure. It's redundant. It's saying the same thing again. It's saying the same thing again. Some of these, you know, one is fine. I got it. It's cute. I don't need three more.
Is something like that one though, or like this one too, you know, let's get the kids' pictures in the paper because their parents are going to like it, and almost like a PR kind of thing? Or
It could be, and I know that editors push for that, but, you know, I mean, you know, I just think, I'm a purist, you know. Stay true to your craft, you know. Tell a story visually, you know. You know, the two kids at the bottom it's the same photograph. Pick the best one and go with it, you know. You know, again, the image size of the person ends up being the same, and the placement of him is right below where he's at anyway, so it's kind of the same photograph. You know, really nice, creative, low-angle bicycle, compelling angle, but then do we really need to see what people look like when they're riding a bike? It's the same thing as my analogy of where they're going to build a shopping center. I know what a field of weeds looks like. I don't need to go out there and shoot a photograph of it and then use space in the paper or online to show people what a field of weeds looks like. 4 photographs, a literal report. They're just being too literal. Okay, well, the tree blew down, and then the power lines were down, and 2 streets had lots of water. You know, you're using a lot of real estate there when you don't need that. You know, select your photographs that have the maximum impact, the maximum visual impact, and go with them. And you don't have to literally be don't have to be literal. Words and visuals working together. Supplement the visual content. When using multiple images, the second photograph should supplement information that is in the dominant photograph. So, as opposed to the other flood, here you've got the flooded street, and now we're inside the house, right? We're going outside and we're coming inside. We're telling 2 different sides of it. You know, sometimes the knee-jerk reaction is to play that second one as the lead photograph. You know, we want to show what it looks like. We want to play that big. Sometimes flip it upside down. Maybe some of the times the detail shot. Sometimes the question mark actually works. In other words, what in the world is going on with him and this foot? What is this foot? And then you have the secondary photograph that provides the literal piece of it, that tells the added information. You know, this is a situation that we run into with community journalism a lot whenever fire departments or police department hold drills, and you go out and you cover it, and then you get criticized because the people pick up the paper and they think, oh my gosh, something terrible has happened, and they read the caption and it's a drill. So what we did in this situation is we used the lead photograph below, but then on top we used a classroom situation and made sure that the headline conveyed to the readers that it's a drill. Dominant underwater provides a unique perspective. The secondary gives information on the river tour. Russian standoff after an explosion, just tight on the rescue. This is one that's, again, a little bit different. The inclination might be to use the secondary one as the lead one, but sometimes this is what I was putting on your wacky hat a little bit, taking a chance visually a little bit, rather than just the routine of kids, sort of marching and learning about Civil War. Maybe do something to where it's just the feet and the guns, Civil War reenactment thing, and then come back with the literal shot as the secondary shot, just to give a little bit of variety. Action, reaction, pairing of images. The house is relocated and the onlookers react to the scene. Wide aerial shot paired with a tight close shot. Lead the viewers. Position, design, layout, all of that comes into play. All photographs, most of them anyway, have direction. And so whenever you have the gurney flying off to the right-hand part of the page, where does the reader's eye go? Right off the page, right? You know this. Again, you have an option here. He is obviously going in one direction. He's obviously talking about corn. Why not work the layout to where they're working together? They're not working in opposite directions. Poor placement of the subject's profile leads the reader away from the story. So in other words, he's over here. You can easily work the layout to where he's facing into his own story. I'll go through these pretty quickly. This is really actually pretty good, a really better placement of pairing of photographs. The subject's direction is looking right down into the detailed secondary image. Really kind of nice. Power lines going up and the worker looking up. Nice direction. Contrast and analyze the placement of these images. So here's what we got. So we got this photograph. It's from a sporting event. Here's how it was used in some newspapers, as opposed to that. It's about managing your space, and that applies to online as well. I'm presuming that most of you just don't have a blog, where it's just like a running. You actually have some flexibility to put images where you want them to be. There's a couple more. Star Tribune versus Ventura. Just a difference in being able to control the direction of the reader's eye. So this was the day that they caught Saddam Hussein. A couple of different versions. We'll just look at them. There's no real right or wrong here, but just interesting in the direction that he's looking and where the story is. And of course, on this day, the wire services provided a number of images, and your students will do the same thing. They're going to come back with a number of images. Now, certainly you want to choose the best photograph primarily, but there might be two that are very, very close, very, very similar, and you're having a hard time deciding which one to go with. Maybe the design of the newspaper comes into play into that, and how can you use that? How can you guide the reader's eye through the page?
Can I ask a quick question? So with the Saddam Hussein one, just the one where he's got his hand up. So in one of the previous examples, you showed the picture where the person was sort of looking out away from the story. Would it be is it conceivable that you could actually flip the image, or is that
I would
no
never
way?
flip an image.
Okay.
No.
I was just double checking.
Yeah.
I thought I knew.
That's, yeah, because, again, it's based on credibility, and while, yeah, it's just,
I mean, if you have a good photographer, chances are you're gonna have enough images to choose from that it won't be an
Right.
issue.
The thing is that, it comes down to credibility, and like, I use this a lot. The guy that's, building his own canoe out of a log or whatever, he works on it every Sunday morning. Well, I can't go on Sunday morning. Can I come over Saturday night? Sure, I come over Saturday night. And he works on it. He pretends to work on it. His neighbors know that he works on it on Sunday morning. Everybody in the community knows that he works on it on Sunday morning. And all of a sudden we have photographs of him working on it at night. We can see outside that it's dark, it's pitch black. It introduces a question, right, in the reader's mind. What happened here? This isn't right. And you ding credibility just a little bit. And you keep dinging that credibility, and that's what happens. And so, I have a little mole on the side of my cheek. You flip the image,
Right.
Everybody that knows me knows, wait a minute, it's not right. She always wears her pen on the left side. Why is it all of a sudden on the right side? It all comes back to credibility. So, I use the term readability impact. I just believe in size. I just think that, the difference that size can make, in an image has tremendous impact. The little things that you don't see by playing an image small, once you get them up, you really can begin to see the details and the nuances. And that's why visual impact and sizing is important. Knowing when to play an image with some size and when to play them small. So compare the sizing dominant influence of news presentations of these front pages. So Kansas City Star, flooding, very nice pairing of images, good lead and good secondary. Orlando blew it out. It's just, this is Katrina. It's a big news story. It has impact. This one, it's a great photograph, but they've watered it down. They've diluted it by adding so many little small images around there that, again, I talk about that photograph that has the visual noise that you want to crop out so that you get the reader right where you want them to go. It's the same thing with design. You don't want a bunch of distracting elements that dilute, that draw the eye away from where you want them to go. Look how much just cleaner that is. Taking those same column inches here, and here, and applying it to the one image just has the impact that you need for that.
Now that big photo, is that, I'm worrying about phones and resolution and all that stuff. Like, could we get that good a photo blown that big in the phone of today?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, these things are taking really good. I mean, they're really high resolution photographs. Yeah. I mean, even the video on them is considered HD, 1980 by 1920 by 1080. It's HD. Yeah.
A lot of problem though is like somebody takes it and they send it to you via email or whatever.
Yeah.
And you get them small.
That's
and
right.
That's where you lose the
You have
information.
to get the original. Yeah. You can't let them send it to you. You gotta-
Like our websites, a lot of us are on SNO, 600 by 900, something like that. You get a great shot.
Yeah, no, these shoot up to 2,500 pixels or more wide. I mean, the problem is that you're getting is that they're either putting them like in a Dropbox or sending them to you email or something like that, and it's the program is actually downsizing them before they send them. You can't do that. You need to be able to, send it high resolution. But most programs now, I mean, if you're sending in Google Mail or whatever, it should have an option there to send it full size.
And that wouldn't, and you could pick that option and it will go. And
It would
go-
just take a while.
It may take a little while to get there.
How do people, or what programs do people use to shrink photos in their classes, or to size them, just Photoshop?
You say straighten.
Or size, yeah,
Yeah.
so is that issue, or?
Yeah, Photoshop.
So this is Katrina again, just Los Angeles Times compared to what Tampa did. You know, just size and impact. I just want to make sure we get through this. Another sample. Oh, this is what I hate. This is one thing that I hate. You know, doodads. I hate doodads. Don't put doodads on your page that don't have any content. It's like putting, I don't know what it's like.
Is that
It's
the
just,
bottom line?
you know, I mean, if you're gonna, again, it gets back to my point that visual journalism should have content to it. And if you decide that the space shuttle is your lead story for the day, and it's got great visual content, why are you doing a big cutout at the, you know, on the page that, you know, that's the first thing that my eye goes to is the car. You know, clean it up. Placing type within photographs, putting screens over things, design techniques that hinder a photograph's ability to visually communicate effectively. I am a purist. I got to tell you, I'm a purist, and I know your students aren't going to like hearing this, but less is more. Less is more. Back off. They're going to get a great photograph. They're going, oh, this is a great photograph, and I'm the designer. I want to put my stamp on it. I want to put my thumbprint on it. You know, the best designers are the ones that just back off, that just restrain, and let the content speak for itself. You know, just New Orleans just ruined a great liftoff picture there by, you know, I mean, putting the story in there. So, you know, there it is. That's the picture. I mean, how much more dramatic do you need than that? 6 columns on the space shuttle launch.
So I live in Norfolk, and we have the Virginian pilot. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but
Yes,
they are
sure.
really into illustrations.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the illustrators are just looking at his work to remember his name. Sam Hunley came and spoke to our students, and that's like the opposite, because he like draws all over the newspaper. But that's just a style thing, and some people like it, and some people don't.
I'll break his knees.
It's like totally different.
But I mean, can't you apply that to writing? Anything else? I mean, it's
Yeah,
journalism. I mean, you're going to take a really well-written story and throw in a bunch of adjectives and adverbs just to flower it up.
Yeah.
You know, why? You know, I understand the commercial and economic reasons for trying to be gee whiz, but you know, it comes down to this fundamental thing where I'm not really sure that journalism in a capitalistic society necessarily is the right thing. I mean, we're trying to sell something that we feel like is the fourth estate, right? That is a pillar of, you know, of our democracy, and it's important to do, and it means something. And we're trying to sell it to the mass audiences. And in a time when you go on to Yahoo, and you see photographs that are that big of Britney Spears wearing whatever she's not wearing on that given day, I mean, it's just, you know, I'm a purist. That's all I can say. The Virginian Pilot is one of the best visual newspapers in the nation. And when they do it right, they do it extremely well. But they have a tug of war going on. and it's been a tug of war that's been going on for a long time between designers who want to over-design the news as opposed to presenting the news straightforward.
Yeah, it is so artistic. I mean, you do get distracted by what you see.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a debate. It's a debate. Let's see. Let's bring it all together. So, here's some storm pictures. These are how some newspapers use them. Here's the photograph that moved over the wire. This is Frederick in Virginia. And another newspaper, both size very well. There's no necessarily right or wrong answers here, but you can see how they use secondary photographs, how they use screens and boxes. Here's another one. And this one has three different pages. Little Rock, Tyler, Texas, and all different, not necessarily right or wrong, but again, they've kept them pretty clean. Whenever they use secondary images, they pull them away from the dominant image. There's nothing there that really competes with them. So that's kind of what I have, and we can talk. I did want to leave just a few minutes to talk about the evolution or the emerging technologies in photojournalism, talking about drones, but let's talk a little bit about this. Your point really wraps it up really well, and I'm sure that all of you have students who are very creative and want to do some different things in online newspaper or the print newspaper. And I think it's you know, in your role, I think it's a challenge, but it's doable. I mean, you I think have to recognize the areas that they can play in and have fun with and do some things and let them get that out of their system. And then there's other times that you don't. You play it straight, and it's a great photograph. And, you know, I can tell you at the Virginia Pilot, you know, a photographer goes out and busts their ass and comes back with a really stunning photograph, and then the next morning wakes up and there's doodads all around it. They're heartbroken, you know. It's the same thing. I mean, it's very analogous to, you know, somebody writing a great story that's not an inverted pyramid, that's done in a very, you know, narrative style, and the copy editor chops from the bottom or something like that, you know. I mean, it's just, you know, as editors, you know, you just have to, I think, recognize where are the areas that we can have a little fun, be a little creative, make sure that if we're using art, graphics, doodads, gizmos, that they're used smartly, you know, that they're used for content and information. And they can have some fun, sure, but then perhaps there's other places where it's better to play it straight. It's a great photograph, it's a great story, don't muck it up. What else is going on in your worlds?
Kids will feel reticent about getting close. As a professional, what would you say? Like, you know.
It is difficult, and you know, if you have adjustable cameras, I would suggest trying to get like an 85 to 100 millimeter lens. You don't need anything more than that, because then if it's like a 135 or 180 or something like that, it's really hard to get in focus. But if you have like an 85 to 100, however close they think they are, that lens just gets them that extra step closer. It does it for them, and it really can help a lot. Just having that medium focal length lens there to help them get closer. If it's one of these, I wouldn't put too much of his artificial. It's not a real zoom. It's a electronic zoom. Basically, it just magnifies, you know, the sensor, or crops in on the sensor to do the zoom. You know, it's just, I'm not sure that there is a good answer. That's a tough thing for us all to get over. One of our very first assignments in Photojournalism 101 here is called Breaking the Ice. We call it Breaking the Ice. And basically we send the photographers out with a camera and we say, you have to come back with 3 images of a person you've never met before that's a stranger, and it has to be tight. And you have to come back with a story about them. Who are they? What are they about? Where do they work? What do they do? Why are they here? It's breaking the ice. So sometimes the best thing may be to invert that and have the conversation, if it's applicable. Start the conversation first and just kind of ease in a little bit closer, you know, nonchalantly, and then take the photograph. It's tough. It's tough.
How do you deal with coaches restricting access to great photography?
Oh.
Or refs, or volleyball line judges?
Yeah.
I mean, I take them out on their first few sports assignments, and I tell them exactly where they're allowed to stand, and I stay there for like 20 minutes, then I back off.
Mm-hmm.
But it still happens after I've
Do they
left.
tell them to leave the area?
Oh, you need to be behind this blue painted line, which is actually not true. You know, that kind of stuff?
Ignore them.
Any tips there? So it's like dealing with the public, really.
Yeah, you know, I would document it as best you can. Get, you know, I mean, you don't need to be, you know, rude about it or anything like that, but encourage the person to try and get the program to get the ref's name, you know, so that they have the ref's name, what they said, when it was, and all of that. And then you as the advisor circle back around to the person with a very, you know, informative, just want to clarify, just want to make sure. Sometimes just asking a question I found makes your point without really, you know, I just want to make sure because as I understood it, the blah, 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 but I just want to make sure because, you know, or a coach or whatever. Yeah, and they're not going to understand. I think the coaching staffs are probably the hardest. You know, they're dealing with liabilities and all of that kind of stuff.
And I'm gonna say that's very true, and now, you know, I kind of respect their little lines or whatever, because I had a little girl taking pictures, and she was on the sideline, and I had specifically told her to stay out of the box where the boys are, but you can walk around on the other side. I gave her the area. Well, she didn't listen, and one of the plays that they had, the football player ran into that section. That little girl flipped. And it turned out that I wasn't at that particular game. And I saw it on TV. And it was like, you know, boom, and I thought, oh my God, and I called on the phone and said, who was that? Because I thought it was my senior photographer. It turned out it was my freshman. She said, don't worry, ma'am, I'm fine. But that scared me. Yeah. And, you know, it's like, okay, they have rules. And I know sometimes they overdo it. But sometimes I think if you talk to the ref or talk to the administrator that's in charge of the game, they could more or less help you get where you want to be without being in a position where you can get hit or whatever.
I mean, but one was the assistant, the principal saying it might just get you from the stands. The news isn't happening in the stands.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
one of the things that I would encourage is that, you know, you start with the students and, you know, explain to them that with any situation dealing with sports, there is an inherent risk that if you're shooting that sport, you're going to be in that position. Now I say that because then you can take that full circle back to the official, back to the assistant principal and say, we coach and teach our students that they understand that there is inherent risk of where they're at, and they choose or sign a waiver or whatever that they're cognizant of that. So it's sort of like you're taking that extra step to show responsibility for your students, and you're just not sending them out there, that you've instructed them and coached them on safety and techniques and things like that. And then you talk to the administrator or the vice principal or the ref about what you have taught your students, what you've talked to them about, and you want to make sure that the guidelines for this game are going to be the same as the guidelines for every game this season, and those kinds of things, or the coach or whatever. And sometimes just having taken that due diligence to instruct and coach and your own students provides at least a reasonable foundation for you to then have a conversation with the administrators. It may not help, but it certainly helps you in your reflection of you in their eyes that you've taken that ownership of that. We have just a few minutes, but before we go, I just want to. This is emerging. This is the emerging thing, and some of you may, in the next few years, have the opportunity to get these, because these are going to be going down in price. They are they're referred to as drones, but they're actually called unmanned aircraft. They're very simple to operate. They operate on a GPS, just like your phone. And the reason that they become popular is because of the technology that has come about. The Department of Defense has 26 satellites around the Earth. They developed GPS. I forget what year it was, about 10 years ago or whatever. They released that technology to the public. They do not charge the public for the use of those satellites to get that information, that GPS information. And so every cell phone provider, Garmin thing that you have in your car is based on those satellites. These are based on those same satellites. So now, what used to be remote control hobbyists, whenever that didn't happen and you went up and you took it up and you went forward, it would keep going forward. Or it would just kind of do whatever and go whatever. Now with these things, with GPS, you bring them up and you let go of the controls, it is rock solid. It will stay right there, even in a wind. It won't move. And when you push it forward, it'll go forward, and when you let go of the control, it will stop. When you go left and let go, it'll stop. Right, whatever. It's not so much the doodad as much as it is the combination of being able to use aerial photography or videography and these new micro cameras, these GoPros. They have amazing capabilities. And right now, there are restrictions with the FAA to use these. You can't fly them in certain areas, and you have to be a hobbyist. But it's coming, and I just wanted to let you know that eventually, the FAA probably within the next year is going to set forward some advisories and recommendations on use of unmanned aircraft to be able to use them for photography. And I think that they're going to be especially applicable for you all, because how cool would it be to be able to shoot the band group shot on the football field from that elevated position, or to be able to do any number of things and get any number of images from an elevated position. We're not talking about a huge, we're not sending it up 100 feet or 200 feet high. It's just getting that different perspective. And again, it's a tool. You got to know when to use it for the right time, right? But I just want to make you sort of aware that these things are coming, they're out there, and they're really pretty moderately priced. A lot of them have 4K capability with video. They can shoot still photographs as well. You can see FPV view, which is first person point of view. In other words, you have a little monitor. One person is flying, the other person is with the little monitor, And the person flying keeps his eye on it up here, and the person with the monitor can actually see what the camera is seeing. And you can do some pretty amazing stuff. And you know, I think it's very possible that in the future for high school publications online as well as in print, you're going to be able to get a different perspective and storytelling based on this. These are especially great for environmental stories, conservation stories. National Geographic is using them like crazy, and of course news stories. Yeah.
Our local cable access TV has one, and so they let our high school borrow it to take like the senior class photo on the football field,
right.
And a couple other things, and they like to do, you know, have it hover at different times over the center of town, and then they broadcast.
It really gives a different perspective. Yeah.
Have you used them?
Yes.
So I saw like a New York Times thing on them. It was about wedding people using them for wedding photos, and they had a picture of like one of the drones crashing into the bride in the middle of the wedding. Is that just basically pilot error?
Just an idiot. Yeah. There is going to become a real separation between the operators. We don't use the word pilot so much, but the operators that are trained and those that are hobbyists and really don't know what they're doing. And I think that's where the FAA is really going to come down, is that it's going to require, for commercial purposes, I mean, for not just for a hobbyist that wants to go out and play, but for wedding photographers, or they're being used in utility industry a lot to check water towers and high tension lines for damages and things like that, rather than the liability of sending a person up there, right? For any type of commercial use, they're probably going to require some type of safety course, safety certification, as well as some type of minimal FAA training that you would get as a pilot. And with those things, you just become smarter. But you're right, right now we're in a gray area, and right now, you know, for every one idiot that lands their drone on the White House lawn, you know, it damages us all. But I do have one little thing here. So let's see if I can find that. So this is a little thing I shot. Just some kids playing softball out in the park. How cool would that be to have on your, you know, publication website?
But I missed the close-ups of the players and the sweaty face.
Well, that's why you need two. You need a photographer on the ground as well. Yeah, and the ideal in any of these situations is to use this as a supplement. You know, you have the videographer on the ground with a DSLR, doing the interviews, doing the other things that come with it, and then this supplements that.
And then there's sports that outlawed it. I'm a crew coach, and we have to hear a warning before each regatta from our officials about drones because coaches don't interact with rowers, same with sailors when they're out on the course, out on the river. So there's some paranoia that coaches are going to start using drones and then communicate back with their coxswains and their sailors.
Interesting.
So there are some sports that have already said no drones allowed.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of that. This was a bunch of, you know, fraternity yodel heads at the park.
I wish I could spy on my kids in their boat from a drone.
But it, like, I mean, isn't that, couldn't you do it like during a practice or something?
Sure, just to like learn. Yeah, well in practice you're right beside them in a motorboat anyway.
Right.
Just during a race you're away. Yeah.
I think right now you just have to keep an eye on what the FAA, you want to do it responsibly, legally, all of that. But I just wanted to point out that it's coming. So, you know. Yeah.
I was gonna say, if you've seen them ones, I can't remember what company are making them, but you put it in the air and their promo video is somebody running and it will follow you.
Right. That's the Lily. It's called Lily, and basically the aircraft has a transmitter, and you wear a receiver on your wrist, and it basically tracks the receiver from your wrist wherever it goes.
What do you So it just follows you around?
Right. You can have it. You can program it to be directly overhead, off to the one side or the other by so many feet, and it just tracks it. I mean, it's using GPS the same way. It's just.
What if we use it for like mountain bikers and runners who are off course?
Snowboarders, skiers,
okay, like a safety thing almost, and also to get video.
Canoers,
Gotcha.
Any number of things. Yeah. So it's coming, and prices are going to come down, and it'll be a great tool in your visual journalism program to have something like that. So.
Do a lot of you guys have GoPros and use those in your programs?
RSGA has it, but we don't.
GoPros are nice. They're coming down in size, cost. You can get like a GoPro 3 very inexpensively now. They're just great. I mean, they have you can stick them on helmets and bottoms of shoes and cars and bicycles, and just get a really different perspective of things. My wife stuck it on our dog one day.
Our dog's one too.
Yeah, the kids like their phones.
So. Any other thoughts, observations? I hope that I've helped. If there's ever anything that I can do to help, my card is up here. We're with the Donald W. Reynolds Journalism Institute here at the Missouri School of Journalism, and it's Pictures of the Year International. And like I said, going full circle, again, I want to thank you. You guys do make an impact, so keep it up.
Thank you.